just continuing what we've been doing the last couple of days. So we want to simplify each of these square roots, and the first thing we're going to do to try to simplify them is to what? Starts with an F. Factor, right? So we're going to do a factor tree, and we're going to factor each of these. So let's start with the square root of 70. How does 70 factor? 10 times 7. Okay, and then 7 is prime, so I'll circle that. 10 keeps going, that's composite. 2 times 5. Alright, so next thing we do is we rewrite it. So in our square root, instead of 70, now we have okay. And then we look for pairs. Do we have any pairs here? No. So we don't have anything that's going to get outside of the square root because there are no pairs. So now we multiply it out. And 2 times 5 times 7 is 70. So our answer is 70?
No.
What's missing? The square root, right? So we didn't do anything to get rid of the square root. Nothing canceled the square root, so that square root is still there. So our answer here is going to be the square root of 70. Same thing we started with because we didn't have any pairs. When you don't have pairs, nothing cancels, and so that's going to be your answer. Now, 256 is kind of a big number. I'm not really sure how to factor it, except I know one number that has to go into 256. What number has to go into 256? 2. Why does 2 have to go into it? Because it's an even number, right? So 256 is even, so I know it's going to be 2 times something. And you can go ahead and use your calculator to figure out what it is. You multiply by 250 or multiply by 2 to get 256. And so what do you type into your calculator to figure that out? So we'll type in 256 divided by 2, and that tells us what we multiply by 2 to get 256. And when we do that, we get 128. Now again, 128 is kind of a big number. I don't know what goes into it, except 128 is also even, right? So since 128 is even, I know that's going to be 2 times something also. So we type in 128 divided by 2, and we get 64. Now that's a number I know. So we can keep going with 2 if we want, because 64 is even, but we could also use 8 times 8, right? That's what I'm going to do. So we do 8 times 8, and then each of those 8s is going to be 2 times 4, and the 2's are prime. The 4's are still composite, so we keep going with those. Each of those 4's is going to be 2 times 2. And I think that's it, right? We're at the end of the road on all of them. So how many 2's did we end up with here? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8 it looks like, right? So we're going to rewrite this, and we have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. Now, the way I have that written is actually bad because that just looks like 22,222,222, right? What am I missing? Yeah, some multiplications in there. Means something very different with this in there. All right, so what else am I missing? Missing the square root. Missing the 2 in front of the square root. And the equal sign to show that this is the same thing as this. All right, so don't forget that 2 out in front. That's really important here. All right, now that we've got the prime factorization written out, what's the next step? We're going to circle pairs. So we're looking for 2 of the same number. So we've got a pair of 2's here. We've got a pair of 2's here. Got a pair of 2's here and a pair of 2's here. All right, everything's circled, so what does that mean?
It all goes outside though.
Everything's going to be outside the square root, so the square root is going to be gone, right? We don't need the square root anymore, right? So if everything's circled, everything's going to go on the outside, so the square root's going to be gone. So what do we have on the outside?
2 times 2 times 2 times 2.
All right, so we've got 2 from the coefficient that was there to begin with. And then we've got 1, 2, 3, 4 more 2's that we get from the pairs on the inside. So 2 times 2 times 2 times 2 times 2. Whew. All right, what is, let's just do it one at a time. What's 2 times 2?
4.
Times 2
8.
times 2
What? 16.
times 2.
30.
32. Last one, we have the square root of 1,600. 1,600 is even, so we could divide by 2, but there's a bigger number that we know has to go into it.
116.
116, right? So it ends in a 0, so I know 10 goes into it, but it ends in 2 zeros, so I know also that 100 goes into it. So I'm going to do 116. So then what do we multiply to get 100? 10 times 10. Okay, you could do 50 and 2, you could do 25 and 4. I like 10 and 10 personally. And then each of those 10s will be 5 times 2. Alright, how about that 16 over there? What do we multiply to get 16? Okay, we could do 8 and 2. I also heard 4 and 4. We'll do 4 and 4. And each of those 4s then is going to be 2 times 2. Alright, so again, we're going to rewrite it. So square root of 1,600 is going to equal the square root of all of that multiplied together. How many 2's did we end up with? 4, 5, 6. Okay. And how many 5's did we end up with? Yes, good. So the square root didn't cover everything, so I want to make sure I extend that so it covers everything that's inside of that square root. Now what? Now we're going to circle pairs. So we've got a pair of 2's, another pair of 2's, another pair of 2's, and a pair of 5's. Again, we have everything circled, right? So what does that mean?
Outside.
Everything's going to be on the outside, so we don't have a square root anymore. Right? So on the outside, what are we going to have?
2 times 2 times 2 times 5.
Again, I want you to notice that we only have one number on the outside for each pair that we have on the inside. Okay, so when we have a pair on the inside, it's going to be one number on the outside. All right, let's do this one at a time again. What's 2 times 2?
4.
Times 2?
8.
8 times 5?
8. 40.
8 times 5 is 40. What kind of number is 1,600? It's a
Perfect square.
perfect square. Okay, so actually 256 was also a perfect square on the last one because when we factor it and we circle our pairs, everything gets circled. So we don't have a square root left. So 1,600 or 1,600 is the same thing as 40 squared.